Welcome to the Moon Manifesting Podcast. I'm Kyra Howearth, your host. Here on the show, we talk all about manifesting your dreams with the power of the moon so you can use the cosmic energy to transform your life. Hello and welcome back to the Moon Manifesting Podcast. It's Kyra Howearth, and today I have a very special guest with me. I have Genna from Rose Cauldron Magick, and she's a creative, witch, and inspiring crystal healer based in Sydney. And when she's not crafting or casting, you can find Genna also writing poetry. I know that she's just written her first poetry book. She also loves watching Buffy and cuddling with her familiar Percy. So big welcome to you, Genna.
Hi, Kyra. I mean, we've been talking back and forth for what seems like forever, and it's just so nice to see you face to face and actually just chat. It's really nice.
It is. It is. I love it. Like we have chatted for I can't even remember how long now. Like I think all this year on Instagram.
Yeah.
And it's been really nice. And now we're like here chatting like face to face. And I'm so excited because one of the things that Genna has really inspired me through our chats on Instagram is she does a lot of spellcrafting and rituals and that sort of thing. And she inspires me so much. So we're going to be chatting a lot about that in today's chat. We're going to talk about spellcrafting in general, as well as like spells with the moon and that sort of thing. Genna, I guess let's just dive straight into it. I
Mm.
guess going right back to the basics of spellcrafting, like if there's someone who's listening to the podcast and they're a bit new to crafting spells or rituals, how would they start?
I think one of the biggest things that I would say is do a bit of research and find out, what really makes your heart sing. Like, is it crystals? Is it herbs? Is it divination? And sort of find that thing that, really fires up your heart. I mean, for me, especially going in, it was crystals, through and through. Um, and so I've been using a lot of that in my magic. But I guess, yeah, my first port of call would be to find that thing that, really lights you up and then sort of pursue that. I guess, once you've found, that offshoot that you really want to start working with, maybe pull up, a couple of books or, some online articles in terms of correspondences around, those crystals. And, when you do get deeper, into spellcraft, you might be able to eventually start creating your own correspondences for different things. But to start, I would probably, just pull up some books and just and pick out some correspondences that really resonate with you. Like, if you were working, some love magic, like rose quartz, that's the stone of unconditional love. So, going down that road. So I think, yeah, definitely find, what inspires you, and then to look for correspondences would be my first two things that I'd recommend.
Yeah, that's actually really beautiful advice because I know when I first started off with my witchcraft journey, I went down the path of herbs and dived right into that. Like, got a whole advanced diploma in Western herbal medicine because I just like fell in love with not only the magic of herbs, but also all the other things that you can do with herbs.
Yeah.
And I think that's the same with you because I know that you've been studying crystal healing this year, and that's probably stemmed from your witchcraft practice. And now you're going like really deep into that, like that offshoot, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like my course, like and what I've been doing with crystal healing, it really feeds well into witchcraft, particularly just like the healing aspect of it, because it is such a big part, I guess, of my craft. And so to be able to sort of combine the two and see how they merge, like that's been a really great learning experience for me, this past year. So that's been good.
Yeah, oh, that's amazing. So with spellcrafting for beginners, are there any like big like do's or don'ts that beginners should be aware of? Like, is there anything that you must do or that you think, you should always consider doing, or anything that you definitely should not do? And I know those are like some kind of uh
Yeah.
interesting questions. But yeah, what's your thoughts there?
So yeah, that's a really interesting question, Kyra. So I think this is a subject of big contention when it comes to must I draw a circle every time I cast a spell? And that's definitely a witchy hot topic. But I'd say for me, and I guess in my own practice, I don't cast circles every time I do a spell because I might be doing something as small as, lighting a tea light and, reciting an affirmation or an intention. An intention. But yeah, I feel like if you're doing something a lot bigger and you feel like maybe there's going to be some big spirit energy, you might draw in something that might be negative, then it's a good idea to cast a circle. But I would definitely say it's not something that you have to do, even though some books or witches might tell you you have to do it every time. Yeah, so that's something, yeah, that I would say is, yeah, you don't have to do it every time by any means,
Yeah.
especially if you're short on time or the space is a bit limited or whatever. It's definitely not a prerequisite for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I recently did get a ritual book, and in the book, it does recommend, like always, casting the circle. And that's not something that I have really done a lot in recent years. I used to do it a lot when I started off my practice, and over the years, it was kind of like, oh, it just kind of dropped off a bit.
Yeah.
And so I got back into casting the circle when I've done rituals lately. But then sometimes, like, I'd just be doing like smaller little rituals, and I was like, oh, do I really need to cast a circle? And
Yeah.
I feel like using our intuition for these sorts of things can also be a big guide for, whether it is appropriate to, for example, cast a circle or do other things that you may find in common rituals and spells, but at the same time, you don't always have to do them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it could be just something simple of if you want that protective energy, you could either maybe like hold a protective crystal in your hand before you start, like a hematite or a tourmaline or something. You could even light like a black candle, in the background and sort of have that protective energy. So there are other sort of things that you can do that might also add to the ambience a little bit more on what suits you. Yeah, that you can do to I guess just have that protective energy over you as you cast. So yeah, there's lots of different things that you can do for sure.
Yeah, 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 definitely, 100%.
Mm.
So, talking a bit more specifically about moon spells now, yeah, what sort of things have you done in the past when you've done spell crafting with the moon?
Yeah, one of the best ones, or most effective that have come to mind is I did a ritual bath. I think it was probably maybe 2 or 3 moon cycles ago. And so there were two main things that I was trying to attract. So I was trying to attract, because a new girl had started over at work. And so I wanted to manifest, good training for her over that lunar cycle. And then also because me and my husband Dylan were going to go away to Tassie for a while, I wanted to manifest, safe travels and that sort of thing. So I lit two different candles to correspond to those different intentions, and sort of read affirmations aloud or just like a little spell in the bath as well, just to invite, those energies in. And that was a new moon that I did that on, which is really great. And I found that both of those things manifested really well across that period. Like the training went super well, and my colleague Tashari, yeah, she loved it and was really receptive to it. And our travels went really well as well. So that's a big one that springs to mind for sure.
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. And I love that you like specified like which moon phase you did that on, because
Mm,
I think having an understanding of the moon phases, like every witch should have some sort of understanding of the energies of those different phases so that you can time your spells, your rituals accordingly. Because as you would know, like there's different energies with those different phases. So new
mm,
moons can be really good for setting intentions, whereas working maybe with the waning phase of the moon, that's more about letting go or releasing.
yeah.
So that's really cool to hear that that went really well for you. I
Mm.
wanted to take it back a step as well, because I didn't ask this question just before. Um, Writing your own spells, like, is there like a way that like can everyone just write their own spells, or do you think beginners should stick to spells in books, or like how would you go about that?
I think definitely something that really feeds into effective spellcrafting is your level of confidence. And I feel like that's different for every, witch. There are some people who who, come into it and they feel like, they're quite experienced even after just, doing it a little bit or like reading certain books and they feel confident. People as well, like for example, like, I have a writer's background, right? And so I really felt like, being able to, write poetry and short stories and that sort of thing, that fed really well into creating my own spells and writing them down. Like it came quite naturally to me. So I feel like if you do have an inclination like that and you do have a good grasp on whether it's herbs or crystals or whatever you're wanting to work with, like I think it's fine. Like I don't think you have to be like, oh, like you have to have done it for X amount of time to be able to craft your own spells. Like I'd say as soon as you feel confident enough to do it, try it out because it's such an amazing process. And even if it doesn't go well the first time round, the clock's not ticking. You've got time to refine the process and to go, back, into it and assess things. So yeah, I'd say there's no set time frame at all for that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Because I know like a lot of like beginner witches, they kind of feel like they have to follow spells. I have that exact same mug, by the way, Jenna.
I know you do. It's so good.
Just so you like just taking a sip. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, with like beginner witches, I know like a lot of the time they feel like they have to follow spells like to the T. They have to have
Mm,
all the different things, all those like specific crystals or herbs, and then like sometimes that can be a bit of a blockage because they might be like, oh, I don't have access to that crystal or I don't have that herb. I can't get it anywhere in my local area. So
mm,
I guess like what you're saying as well is that you can have creative freedom
mm.
to do your own spells in a way that feels good for you and using what you have rather than feeling like you have to follow like something that someone else has done. Like if it's, if you don't have the things or it doesn't resonate, you can adapt it or, just make it your own.
Exactly. And this is something that I mentioned on another podcast as well, is that um, at the end of the day, you don't need any of the fancy tools. Like as long as you have a quiet place where you can relax and your mind and setting those intentions, like that's all you need. As long as you have the ability to distill exactly what it is you want to bring in or take away, like that's all there is to it. And that in itself is powerful. The tools, and all that other stuff, it just helps, with, energy channeling and, the conducting of the energy, so to speak. So it's definitely not a prerequisite to have any of those things. If you're really short on time, like if you're a witch that's, in the broom closet and you can't have all of these tools, just having you and maybe like a candle or something in your mind is enough. It's more than enough. So yeah,
That's right. That's right. The magic is within us. Like
yeah,
it's not dependent on all these tools, the crystals, the herbs, or anything else. It's always us. We are the magic.
definitely.
Um, yeah, I love that. So let's talk a bit about crystals and the moon. I feel like these are like maybe our favorite topics.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
so using crystals with the moon, what are some ways that you would use crystals with the moon?
Yeah, so it's so good at the timing of this question because yesterday I was listening to a great podcast episode on like moon crystals. And like, so the main ones they were focusing on were selenite and moonstone. Um, yeah, so and it also sort of touched on menstruation and the moon cycle as well. And I feel like because moonstone, is really powerful in terms of like, regulating like your period cycle and that sort of thing, you could be using it, in that sense and timing your spell work, around that. So like I feel like, yeah, that's definitely something like a way that you could sort of use the crystals and timing with the moon. um for example, like quartz is also really good, as you would probably know, yeah, for the moon. And so you could potentially do a spell on the new moon, I mean the full moon, if you wanted clarity on a particular topic or a situation. You feel your mind's a bit foggy, because clear quartz is so good for unblocking that. So you could do, a little clarity spell around the full moon with a clear quartz, that sort of thing. So yeah. Mm,
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. I love that. So yeah, so selenite, moonstone, and clear quartz are all like they have that strong affinity with the moon. So
mhm.
that's really cool to know. Um, what are your thoughts about charging crystals under the full moon? Is this something that you do, Jenna?
It is something that I try to do as often as I can under the full moon. It doesn't always happen. But I've
Yep.
got this beautiful, and this is where we're going back into selenite. I've got this beautiful like chakra dagger. It's like a selenite dagger, and it's really good for just laying a whole bunch of crystals like on the surface. And I've just got it on like a windowsill where the moon like can get to it. So maybe getting something like that or like a charging plate. Is a really good way to charge your crystals under the moon. Yeah, I mean, it's not something that has to be done every cycle, like if you can't get to it for whatever reason. But I guess, it's a nice habitual thing to, I guess, get, to do and do as part of your practice. It is definitely something I try to do, yeah, quite frequently and with the moon water as well, for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the moon water. We'll talk a bit more about moon water in a minute because I've got some more questions about that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
But yeah, like charging the crystals under the moon, though, like this is definitely like I agree with what you said. Like I used to do it every single full moon, like when I first started off years back. And then as time's progressed, it's like, okay, I maybe don't need to do it every full moon. Like maybe if there's specific crystals that I have worked with in that moon cycle, I might just charge those
Mm.
rather than lugging all of my crystals out to like a moonlit spot. I used to take them out to my backyard and I used to get like a bit worried about like birds coming in and
Oh,
stealing
yeah,
them or things.
yeah.
But yeah, so these days I just try to find like a nice windowsill that the moon shines into. But then my cats found my crystals last full moon. I'd left them out and I woke up the next morning. I was like, oh no, my crystals. And they were like batting the crystals around everywhere. So
Oh, no.
I have to find somewhere better. Does Percy, your cat, does he like to play with crystals too?
He does, and it's funny because you know how I showed you that crystal grid that I made as part of my course the other week? I
Yes.
was so worried about that, like because he was immediately on it and he was just like trying to bat things around. I did have, like I told you, that cushion barricade that I had, when I wasn't in the room or was just like out of the house, and he was okay. But like, yeah, I definitely like it's good that I've got a couple of higher windowsills that he can't get to. So I've been
Oh,
putting
good.
crystal grids. Yeah. So a crystal grid that I've done for my friend, who's got a bit of like, some back and knee pain. I put her crystal grid just like on that windowsill where I got my selenite dagger as well. This is a really good place for my crystals. So I'm glad I have that.
Yes. I know. It's so good to have like somewhere safe where our
Yeah,
familiars just can't get to them as much as they want to
exactly.
help.
Because they just feel the energy, right? Like they want to connect.
Yeah, that's it.
Mm.
So going back to moon water. So I would love to know because obviously you work a lot with crystals. Do you add crystals to your moon water?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So I did try this out a little while ago. Like I had some moonstone chips and I sort of put them in the little like bottle that I have of my moon water and then charged it. What I found though was that because I commonly use it in tea, right? So when I'm like pouring the tea, the chips were coming out as
Oh,
well, which wasn't great. It's really good, I think, like, if you're doing it in a bath, because, the chips will add to, you know, the bath and that experience. But if you're drinking it, it's probably not the safest.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'd probably, if I was gonna use a crystal, I'd probably have like, a flask with a larger base and maybe a larger crystal, but with a smaller neck where it actually can't come out and just like have it
Mm,
just there. Sort of almost as like a permanent fixture in the bottle. So if I was
yeah.
gonna do that, I'd probably do that instead. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's actually a great idea. When I make moon water, I've got like a large clear quartz like point that it basically just lives in the jar. It's probably been in there for a good 7 years, and I just
I
reuse
love
it
that.
like almost every moon cycle when I'm making moon water, and it just stays there. But I use my moon water a lot to actually water my house plants. I find
Oh,
that it
that's
just like
great.
kind of yeah boosts the vibes of my houseplants, stop them from dying. So
Yeah.
but like yeah, you had some cool uses about using moon water too, like in your bath and in like making tea. And I agree, like not using crystals in the moon water if it's for consumption,
Mm,
particularly for like beginner witches, because there are a lot of crystals out there that can leach like different heavy metals or things into the water. So probably just being mindful of that if you're listening to the podcast and you want to
mm.
give it a try. Clear quartz is usually pretty safe, but just maybe check your crystals. But what
Mm.
other things, Genna, do you use moon water for?
So a big one that I use my waterfall is for cleansing tools. So like for example, like if I've got like an athame or like, my crystal wand, I like to use and like my pendulum as well is really good for cleansing divination tools. So that's a big way that I use that. Um what else? I think for me, it's mainly been baths and tea because they're just two things that I'm doing regularly or like using regularly. I do
Yeah.
definitely when I get onto planting my spring garden, I definitely want to be using some as well, like you've been doing, yeah, with actually watering the plants and giving them a bit of a boost.
Yeah.
That'd be good, yeah. But those are the main ways that I tend to use the water.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. That's so inspiring. So let's go back to yeah, other crystal practices that maybe align with the moon. So we've talked a bit about like moon water, and like crystals that correspond with the moon. Are there any other crystal practices that you might do or that you know of that align with the moon that you might do on a new moon or full moon or something like that?
Yeah, and I haven't done it for a while actually, but I do want to do it soon, is drawing down the moon. And the way, at least that I sort of read to do it was, you actually, it involves a crystal wand and like preferably if you can go outside. So I've got like my balcony, it's actually drawing down the energy, from the moon. And sort of like pointing the wand to the sky. You could even use your finger if you don't have a crystal. But I mean, I guess because we're chatting about crystals, you would use that. And just saying like an affirmation. And there's loads of different ones out there. You can create your own as well. That's one way you can get really crafty, and creative with the writing, and just using that as a way to sort of channel the direct energy of the moon before you actually do a moon ritual. So it's sort of like a really
Yeah.
cool, yeah, pre you know, ritual thing that you can do, which is good. So
Yeah,
yeah.
that's actually really interesting. I think I've heard of drawing down the moon before, but I've never done it. And
Mm,
the way that you've just described it, like I can actually visualize myself doing this, and it feels like a really powerful way to kind of like boost your energy before doing a spell or ritual on a full moon. Like if you really
mm,
want to channel that full moon energy, like you draw down that moon, channel that energy into yourself, and
mm.
like you could have that conduit, like a crystal or something or a wand, and
Yeah,
yeah, and then like yeah, you're kind of all charged up, ready to
exactly.
bring
I
that
love
power into a
that.
spell.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
it's
that's
good.
really cool. That's
Yeah, it's
so inspiring.
definitely, and it's funny that, your question actually jogged my memory on that because it's something that I actually want to do more regularly in my practice. So thanks for that. You've inspired me again to pick that back up. So, mm,
Yeah, inspiration definitely works both ways because now I'm feeling really inspired too.
I
So
love that.
that's so cool.
Mm.
So I guess yeah, anything like with the moon, like are there other correspondences that you use with the moon, like maybe not necessarily crystals, but are there other things that you correspond with the moon when you're doing ritual or spell work?
Um, I'd say, I guess, just like working with a triple moon goddess. I think definitely and it's great because because Selene, who's the Greek moon goddess, like I've been feeling more and more called to sort of work with her and start a relationship, and that sort of thing. And it's interesting reading that in sort of more modern times. I guess on the spectrum of the triple moon with maiden, mother, and crone, Artemis is seen as the maiden, Selene is seen as the mother, and Hecate is seen as the crone. So I'm really interested to sort of dive deeper into, that, and especially sort of, I've started like a vision board on Pinterest for Celine. So like just learning her correspondences, the herbs, offerings, that you can, put out for her. It's been great. Like I've read that like lavender and lemon balm are really good herbs, for Celine. And crystals, yeah, moonstone, selenite, yeah, clear quartz, labradorite as well, which is really interesting because I feel like labradorite is really good. Like I've been using it as a study crystal, and it's really good for focusing clarity. So if you were gonna do like a clarity spell on the full moon, and you really vibe with labradorite, you could use that instead of clear quartz. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that's definitely something that I really want to continue exploring and see where that goes.
Yeah, oh, that's really interesting. Yeah, I love like the idea of working with those goddesses and like talking about Selene, like I think is that like maybe what has brought about the naming of the selenite crystal?
It
Like is
is
that
from
maybe
memory. Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's directly derived. Yeah, from her, which is just fab. I love that.
Yes, that's a really good way to remember like which crystals correspond with the moon. Think of Selene, selenite, the moon, that they all
Yeah,
it's all
exactly.
connected. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so cool. So, what's your favorite spell or ritual that you've ever done? And it doesn't have to be related to the moon. It could be anything, but is there a favorite spell or ritual that you've done that you want to share with the podcast listeners today?
Yeah, that's actually a good question because I feel like I'm picking between babies in a sense, the children. Let me think. Um, so that the spell that I was mentioning around like clarity and the full moon, I'm actually going to get it here because I've got the book. You've probably seen it. Is
Oh,
Moon Magic.
yes. Oh, I love
One of
it.
her spells, yeah, it was so good when I first started. Yeah, the clarity spell actually is directly from that book. And it's wonderful. Like I remember just using it like on a full moon and I was outside, and I was wanting to gain clarity on something just around like because I'd been feeling a bit like blue that week and I was like, oh, where is that actually coming from? Like I want to sort of get to the crux of why I'm feeling, like this. And I did the spell outside and within minutes I just felt like this whoosh go through me and I knew the answer and I had the clarity that I needed around that. So that's yeah, definitely a powerful spell. And if you can get outside to do that, like even better. And for sure. So that's
Yeah.
been a really powerful one. Um I did a divination ritual. Actually, it was one that I crafted. It was during Samhain, so one of the Sabbats earlier this year, and it was to connect with the spirits of my grandparents who passed a couple of years ago, and just using the pendulum to sort of to connect with them, to ask them some questions, got a little clarity on some things. Like that was definitely a really powerful ritual for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Oh, that's
yeah,
so cool. I love hearing about rituals that you've done because it's always so inspiring. Like, and I'm sure I've said this to you on Instagram a lot. Like,
yeah,
it's yeah, like when you have these conversations with like-minded people, like you pick up new things and you learn new things. So hopefully our conversation is also inspiring for other people today. Um,
yeah.
so I guess maybe one last question before I dive into a bit of astrology about you and your
Mm.
chart. But one last question for you, Jenna. What advice would you give to people who are just starting out with moon spells and rituals? Like, would you recommend any particular books or any other things? Or, yeah, what sort of advice would you give to those people?
Yeah, definitely sourcing some books that you feel really drawn to is good. Like that one that just showed with Aurora Kane, like that one is really good because it gives you an overview of the different phases, how to work with them, sort of some historical correspondences, and it dives into the spells at the end as well. So it's a really good sort of way to sort of dip your toes in the water and then just immerse yourself into it. And I think also just chatting with other witches and just getting their to sense and things oh like what sort of moon spells would you recommend or have you done any that you'd like to share that were really powerful and like that. And I think just like leveraging the local community because I've definitely got to say like here in like New South Wales like the witchy community is great. Like there's just so many beautiful humans and like-minded witches around and I think advice that I would give to my younger self actually would be to actually try and seek those connections out because I feel like when I first started in the craft, like I was very much alone in a sense. Like I had my books and things, but like I wasn't really talking to other witches, maybe because I didn't have the confidence and just didn't know who was out there. But it definitely within this local community, definitely leverage that where you can.
Yeah, totally agree. Like when we first start out, we can feel really isolated and we can feel
Mm,
like no one else is into this witchy stuff. And then once we start putting it out there, we actually find that like maybe some of our friends are already into this sort of stuff where you start connecting with new people and it's a lot more like normalized these days. I feel
mm,
like compared to, well, a couple of hundred years ago, like we would be
absolutely.
hanged. So like things
Yeah.
have shifted so much and it's so empowering to see witchcraft coming a bit more maybe not popular is maybe not the right word but it's a bit more um
Understood.
Yeah, definitely. Understood is a good word. I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and I think like in a way because of the really the dark history that we've had in terms of, the witch trials and the hangings and the burnings and all of that, I feel like we're collectively all healing from I think what's called the witch's wound. And it's
Yes.
something that, yeah, it obviously is going to take lots of time and it's probably going to be something that's going to hang around for a very long time. But I think we're definitely lucky, especially in Australia, to be able to practice more openly and be ourselves and yeah, it's a really nice feeling. But I know that a lot of people as well still even here like they don't have that freedom. So I guess the
Yeah.
other thing I would say is that it will get better. just
Yeah.
just hang on to hope.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
And yeah, find your people. Find the people who are a bit more open to it. And
yeah,
yeah, it does make a difference,
yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
All right. So, Genna, I'm going to chat a bit about your astrology. This is something I do with all my podcast guests, often in different ways. But so, Genna didn't actually know her exact time of birth. So, we have her sun and moon sign to chat about today. So, Genna is a Capricorn sun. So, as a Capricorn sun, she can be quite ambitious, looking ahead to the future, like setting long-term goals. And I feel like with that Capricorn energy, because Capricorn is an earth sign, maybe this is why you're a bit drawn to working with crystals,
Mm,
like as opposed to other tools. Like I know you use other tools, but like crystals being like that thing, obviously they're, of the earth, they're
yeah.
literally rocks. So I feel like that kind of corresponds with that. You actually have a lot of Capricorn energy on your chart. I don't know if you've actually ever looked at your chart before, have you?
I have.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so you do have 5 planets in Capricorn, which is it's a lot. So a lot of Capricorn energy, a lot of that earthy, sort of long-term ambitious energy that you've got on your chart.
Mm,
And as an Aquarius moon, and I feel this kind of resonates with what we were just talking about with like kind of feeling alone with our witchcraft practice when we first start off, because Aquarius moons can often feel a bit isolated. They can feel like the black sheep of the family. They can
mm,
feel a bit different from others. Our moon sign often is about our emotions, our feelings, our inner landscape. So it might be like a really internal sort of feeling like of not fitting in, of just being that little bit different. But at
mm,
the same time, Aquarius has this superpower of like, because they are different, it makes them unique and really amazing in those unique ways. So, yeah, if you do have like those feelings of like being a bit a bit Aquarius, a bit a bit different as your moon
yeah.
sign, just know that that's like actually what you're meant to be doing. You're meant to shine that unique perspective out into the world.
I love that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And yeah, I'd be so curious to find your rising sign as well and tell you a bit more about your chart when we get to that. But for now we'll leave it at that.
Mm.
So Genna, do you have any final words to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, so I'd say, whether you're, someone who's beginning, with witchcraft, someone experienced, someone who isn't really practicing but sort of wants to learn more about it, I'd say definitely satiate your curiosity. Buy that book, talk to that witchy friend or someone that you've seen online and I think the more that you reach out and satiate that curiosity, I guess the more our hearts can feel full in a way when we're pursuing something that we're passionate or interested in. So yeah, that's what I would say is just follow your heart, satiate that curiosity, and yeah, there's my final
Yeah,
words.
that's beautiful. I love it. Follow your heart. That's perfect. What a beautiful way to end the episode. So, thank you so much, Genna, for being a very special guest here on the Moon Manifesting podcast. So, you can find Genna on Instagram at Rose Cauldron Magick. I'll pop the link in the show notes. Definitely follow Genna because I know that she's got so much more to bring into the witchy online world. She's yeah, emerging into her witchy self. So definitely give Genna a follow and yeah, stay tuned for all the other magic that she has to share. So thank you everyone for listening in on the podcast today. Stay magical, stay manifesting, and stay tuned. I'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode of the Moon Manifesting Podcast. If you are curious about working with the moon, you can read my book, Moon Manifesting, or join us inside the Moon Manifesting Coven. You'll find the links in the show notes or go to kyrahowearth.com.